think of the joy that you saw on their face, the way they may have wept.
I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Deepti, and the whole team behind Humans of Mitti Ke Rang. It's a wonderful feeling to be here, and I'm certainly looking forward to an interesting discussion today. As you said, about a lesser known topic.
Yes. So, what are you up to these days?
I've got my finger in a couple of pies, if I may say so.
Okay.
Training professionals in communication skills, along with a good understanding of their emotional states. Other than that, I'm also a faculty trainer for Trinity exams in communication. And I'm busy with setting up of a venture with a few of my colleagues, which we will be launching next month. It's an online training forum in business communication. So a couple of things going on.
Okay, so let's begin by understanding what exactly is EQ or emotional quotient.
Right. EQ, EI, EIQ, there are different terminologies being used used for this topic, but all of it, I would say, in a nutshell, is about understanding our emotions, learning to manage those emotions, understanding others' emotions, and then using this awareness and understanding to build strong rapport and relationships. So emotional intelligence is not just self-awareness. It is not only relationship building. It is a coming together of your ability to understand, manage, and use these emotions to finally build good relationships, which of course includes both professional as well as personal.
Okay, so I wanted to talk more about the rapport building subject. Why do you think it's not discussed that widely as compared to self-awareness in other subjects?
That is understandable to the extent because emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness. So we cannot proceed to the stage of relationship building or handling others' emotions without an awareness of our own. And we realize when we start with that process, that itself takes a lot of effort, a lot of understanding, and a lot of introspection to understand how we feel, how we react. So it definitely is the right approach to pay a lot of attention on self-awareness. Having said that, rapport building cannot wait. We cannot wait till we achieve a complete understanding of ourselves and then start building relationships. So somewhere these processes have to happen simultaneously. So the sensitization, the awareness starts, and along with it, we try using what we are understanding to work on relationships. Now, why is rapport important? It goes without saying we do not operate or function in isolation. Whether it is as an entrepreneur, whether you are a corporate professional, whether you are a homemaker, whether you are a family member, you need relationships. The more supportive they are, the better it is for you. Now, in this aspect, there's one more angle. It's not just about getting support, it's also about giving support. So someone who has a good understanding and will know how to give that support in the expected manner, in an effective manner. And rapport will ensure better efficiency, will ensure better environment, or where there is a lot of conflict. It's always better to operate in an environment where there is understanding, where people are able to communicate openly, share ideas, collaborate. So that is where rapport will certainly help us.
Okay, so as we know that Corona is affecting a lot of things, people are getting more into the virtual world. Do you think this has an effect on rapport building as well? Like people are getting less connected even more now?
I would look at it more as a difference in the medium. Just because we get into the virtual space does not mean that we do not connect or rapport is no longer required. In fact, we see a lot, many examples around us. What happens when individuals start getting bitter, or they start using inconsiderate language, when they start targeting or attacking others in the virtual space, we know how unpleasant and how unnecessary the whole environment it becomes. So rapport building, the requirement for it does not change, whether pre-COVID, during COVID, or post-COVID. The mannerism in which we do it, that may get modified, because pre-COVID there was a lot more of non-verbal body language. We would sit closer to people, we could see their expressions more closely, so there were more opportunities to connect with people non-verbally. In the virtual space it gets slightly more limited, so we may have to fine tune our awareness so that we watch out for certain specific cues, to understand how the person is feeling, what they're expressing, and to also pay attention to our listening skills. Because when we are in front of someone, we can get away sometimes with distractions, whereas in the virtual space, you cannot afford any kind of distraction, because listening is the only way to convey to the person that you are paying attention to them and you respect what they are expressing. So yes, we may have to work on certain new approaches, but rapport building, the need for it continues just as before.
Okay, so as you said that listening is a major part of rapport building. So I wanted to know what are the other elements of rapport building, especially considering the fact that it is limited now, there's no physical contact. We are attached to a screen and we're not able to look directly at the person. For example, you have to look towards the camera if you're having a Zoom call. So there is certain sort of detachment that you cannot get rid of. That's not in our hands. So how to
Right.
amp up, like how can we close off that bridge?
Just as I was mentioning earlier, the non-verbal body language cues. There are a couple of cues that we will need to make use of in the virtual space. Now, one aspect which is clearly visible is our face. That means our facial expressions, then use of our hands, then body posture to some extent is visible on camera. So we will have to pay attention to these visible cues and how we are using them to express. So having a proper or a suitable facial expression. Now, if you're going to stare into the camera at someone that way, squinting, now you may have a reason. Maybe it's not clear or the visibility is affected, but the person watching you on the other end will get the impression that you are displeased with something that he or she said. So there is a greater scope of miscommunication. Hence, we will have to pay attention to our body language. Second thing would be the choice of words, the language we use to express our thoughts. When we are personally interacting with someone, we sometimes use our gestures to make up for what we want to express, our excitement, our anger, agitation. We use less words and more of gesturing. But in the virtual space, it gets very difficult. Now, if you have a Zoom call with 50 members or with 100 members, all of them sitting and gesturing is not going to help in comprehension. So that means you'll have to pay attention to your language. Sentence construction, use of language that is simple and easy to understand, and the need to clarify. Whenever someone expresses an idea, in case it is not clear to you, you will have to repeat it or you will have to ask suitable questions to clarify and validate what they said to ensure there is no misrepresentation. And as before, a friendly tone of the voice, being loud and clear, having a smile, having a friendly disposition, that continues to be necessary to build rapport even in the virtual space. Respect, I think, is something that is immaterial of the medium. So uh, whether we are on a Zoom call, on a telephone call, writing an email, or whether we're sitting right next to someone, treating the person in front of you with respect becomes absolutely necessary.
Okay, so there's a belief that in corporate world they believe that showing emotion is a weakness, that you're not supposed to show emotions to your client or to your employer or your supervisor. So how do you think in such situations emotion quotient comes into play?
Okay, now this is about addressing a couple of myths. One is this terminology of weakness, and second is understanding of emotions. Now, when we talk of emotions, there is a difference between emotion and being emotional. So we need to understand the difference. We all have emotions. So this is not something we have chosen or acquired. Emotions are something all humans are, you can say, gifted with. We are born with it. Now, getting emotional, on the other hand, indicates a loss of control. It could be a positive emotion, it could be a negative emotion, as people call it. So in the corporate setup, that control or being mindful of appropriate language, using good or effective ways of expressing ourselves is certainly required. But that is not something I would restrict only to the corporate space. Even in our personal relationships and our interactions, it does become important for us to be mindful of our emotions and the way in which we express ourselves. And now, regarding emotions being a weakness, in fact, emotions don't make us weak. Emotions make us real. Can you imagine sitting across another person who stares back at you blankly like a robot? There is no way you can experience trust in that person, or you will find it possible to interact in an open or in a genuine manner. So emotions is what makes every interaction meaningful. It makes it more relatable. We cannot have any decision making, any interaction, or any relationship building process happening without emotions. So rather than look at emotions as a weakness, I would say emotions are a strength. So let's use this hidden power that emotions have so that we can build better relationships, so that we can express ourselves in a more effective manner. And as for weakness, it can become a weakness if we do not know how to control it or manage it. So I think corporates definitely may not want uncontrolled reactions, but they will certainly want employees who have emotions. Because without emotion, you don't have energy, you don't have passion, involvement, or any kind of interaction.
Okay, so I absolutely agree with the point that emotions are what makes us real. It's what differentiates us with robots. So it's said that emotions are quite contagious. Like if I'm energetic, you will feel that emotion too. If I'm sad, you will feel that emotion too. That's referred to as mirroring of neurons. Your
Right,
brain is wired to mirror whatever the feelings that I am feeling. So in
right.
such a scenario, how can someone be mindful of their emotions so that they do not upset the other person or burden the other person with their emotions?
Okay. Now, of course, this again requires approaching it from two or three ways. One is approaching it from ourselves. Are we aware of the kind of facial expressions we use when it comes to conveying things or expressing ourselves? Many a time we are completely oblivious to how our face appears to others, because it's very rarely that we stand in front of the mirror and talk to ourselves. We are so focused on observing others' faces that we don't know what our face is conveying. So that awareness, and it's like something what teachers say during school days for any elocution contest or any dramatics. They say stand in front of the mirror and practice. There's a reason for that. It's when you observe your face that you know how effectively your expression is coming across, whether it is as per the requirement of the text and whether it is looking pleasant. So this is one exercise which every individual can do time to time. We look at ourselves in the mirror, but we rarely show emotions or expressions on our faces to ourselves. So a little bit of self work on in this area can help us. Um, Now, when it comes to mirroring, if we are sending out a positive emotion, then 90% of the times it gets reflected back. In fact, it is believed that a smile is one of the most contagious facial expressions, but so is anger. So it is very important that we are conveying the right emotion so that we get that reflected back. Then, of course, depending on the context, the situation, there is a suitable emotion for each context. So this is not to say that you keep smiling without thinking of the context. Now, if you have a crisis situation, standing there and smiling at people is not going to necessarily get it reflected back. Instead, people would only get more furious or irritated at your lack of consideration. So understanding the context and understanding how we use our non-verbal body language to express, combining this awareness will be a very powerful way to ensure that people perceive us in the right way, and we are also able to get that emotion reflected back to us.
Okay, so practicing in the mirror will definitely do the trick. Like we can try and control our emotions in that way. Okay, so it's
It's good
believed.
to be aware, yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's believed that empathy is a very big part of like having a great conversation, trying to understand what the other person is going through. But how can you do that with strangers or people you have never communicated with before? How do you understand their emotions?
Now, we look at this term stranger. There's a very lovely quote that says, strangers are friends that we have never met. So, what it's trying to say is that when we approach a person with that attitude, that this is someone I don't know, I have to be cautious about, I'm not interested in, I'm not familiar, there are these certain cues and vibes that we send out to that person as well. As much as you are feeling uncomfortable and conscious, remember the other person is feeling it too. So we have to look for a way to make the person feel comfortable with us. That's when people open up, they communicate, they express their ideas or thoughts. So we are essentially looking at icebreakers. It could be something, some gesture that we do, it could be certain questions that we ask, but the end result has to be we express interest in them. When you express interest in any person, interest in who they are, respect for who they are, most people respond very positively. And they start, when they feel comfortable, they open up. There is greater intimacy that happens in the conversation. So a good way to do that is to start with questions. And here we are not referring to personal questions or probing, intrusive kind of questions, but questions that could be related to what they're interested in. So trying to find out what are some of their favorite hobbies or favorite activities, where they come from, about their place. And it could also be something related to their career, their certain interesting experiences, whether they have traveled, what are some of the things they enjoy doing in their free time. So these kind of specific questions, without being very intrusive, helps initiate a conversation and helps the person express themselves, because every person enjoys talking about himself or herself. And when they do that, it's equally important that we pay attention. When the person is sharing a childhood story and we go looking around or talking to someone else in the meantime or interrupting them while they are speaking, that's again not going to help. So when they are sharing information about themselves, pay complete attention, active listening, where you are listening to understand them. You are not listening or pretending to listen, because people can make out when you are pretending. So when it comes to people we've not met before, the first objective we should have in mind is to make them comfortable. So get them talking, get them comfortable in their space, and that's a great start to building rapport. And as familiarity increases, there will be more and more topics to talk about, and work related or personal information related, that can always evolve with time.
Okay. So extremely sorry about the video part. There's some technical error. So is it
No.
fine to continue like this? It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, perfectly fine. Yeah.
So yeah. Another thing that I was curious about was introspection. Introspection. So it said that introspection leads to self-awareness. But if you are, for example, you had a fight with someone that you're close to, and you're introspecting your relationship with them.
I'm sorry I lost you.
Yeah, so there's a tendency of having that recency effect that you had a fight and taking that into account. So how do you
Right,
think we can do a effective introspection in that way? Because it can lead to having negative thoughts afterwards about that relationship.
right. Now here you've raised a very valid scenario and the topic of introspection. Introspection, of course, it goes without saying, it is something that is crucial. It is essential in the process of self-awareness. Having said that, it also matters on what you're introspecting. What are you reflecting on?
Mhm.
Because we tend to create vicious circles of thought. So if we are going to introspect on, let's say, a negative event or a negative experience, then we tend to go around in circles and keep amplifying that emotion of negativity within us. So that kind of introspection does not help. You are only looking for ways to amplify it and validate what you're feeling. Introspection means reflecting on an issue that would include looking at it from multiple angles. It cannot just be your approach to it or your experience out of it. You will have to consider the points of view or the reactions and responses of other people who were part of that event. And you will have to place yourself in others' shoes. So there is a certain detachment emotionally from that event and looking at it like a movie scene or something that is something that you're reading. You
Mhm.
have to be detached emotionally and look at it just as an event, not as an event where I felt miserable or an event that left me feeling embarrassed. The minute we attach these labels and attach emotionally to it, we become biased, and our introspection cannot be done in a fair and an unbiased manner. So, introspection is essential, but it is equally essential to understand it involves taking multiple points of views. You want to analyze an event, you want to go back and reflect on what happened, then you will have to consider who all were a part of it, what they could have felt from based on what you said and behaved. Maybe they were justified in the way they reacted. Could there have been something different that you could have done to handle it? That would be a way of introspecting um, or reflecting on an event in a meaningful manner.
Okay, so I completely agree with the point that the way we are looking at introspection could be wrong, but it is the like for short way of getting out and understanding yourself. It's the best way to self-analyze. As I've heard that they
Yes,
say that you should not look at the why, like why is something happening to you, rather than you should look at what I can do to make it better. So I
right.
love that approach that you should introspect, but you should try to do it in a right way. So, talking about
Absolutely.
the myths that are usually around the subject of emotion quotient, people have lots of myths as like gender biases that women are supposed to be more empathetic than men. So, what do you have like? What are your comments and thoughts about the same?
As much as I would like to agree to that, but I'm sorry to say, emotional intelligence is beyond gender, irrespective of age, irrespective of background. It is a completely personal and individualistic thing. We all are born with emotions, but our approaches to it are based on our experiences, our backgrounds, certain influences that we may have had that shape our thought process. Because we all have these emotional filters. And I use this word filter because it is important in this context to bring it up. We have our conscious mind, we have our subconscious mind, and we have our unconscious mind. The conscious part of it is where we process any stimulus that we get from the environment. But even in the conscious mind, there are some thoughts that we are not aware we have absorbed, some influences, some we are aware. But it is the subconscious that processes all this information that we gather through all our years of living. And we apply this filter to this subconscious mind. And these filters include our belief systems, our values, cultural influences. And these are things we are not even aware of. They're so innate, inbuilt in us that most of the information we absorb, it gets processed using these filters. So when it comes to emotional intelligence, we are talking of these handling, understanding these emotional filters, these certain belief systems. And that is not really about being a man, a woman, a child, a Westerner, an Asian. It just doesn't matter. It can be any person who has a good awareness, who is able to have good rapport with people, will clearly show a higher level of emotional intelligence. Whereas someone who struggles with handling emotions, who often finds it difficult to interact with people or to connect with people, we will find they will have a lower level of emotional intelligence. So, but yes, even the people with higher levels will have to keep working on it. EQ is something which does not finish. The work doesn't finish in 3 months, 6 months, or 5 years of your life. There is no qualification and certification at the end of it that from now on you are, set in terms of your emotions. This is a lifelong process. The more aware you become, the stronger your understanding becomes, the better your handling of emotions become, more effective your relationships become. So that makes you a better leader. And I use the word leader not in a corporate sense, because we all are leaders in terms of influencers for people around us in whatever capacity. So leadership skill is not something meant only for CEOs or for presidents or for entrepreneurs. Leadership is something every human being requires, because leaders are influencers. And you, as a family member, you are a leader for your family members. In society, you are a leader for whatever community or group you function in. So good EQ will definitely enhance your leadership abilities and the way you connect with people.
Okay, so like you said about the leadership, there are like two things that I thought could be like elaborated more on. First is the filter part, like how can we condition ourselves to filter out things in a better way? Like everybody builds that filter during the childhood or the emotions that they are going through. So how can
Right,
you build it in such a way that you are accepting of every other person's emotions and you are more empathetic towards them?
right. Um, Irrespective of what our background is, irrespective of the value systems that we may have, there is one thing that is common to all of us. We seek similar things. Like we could be an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, maybe someone who is running a home business, or just a student. What at the end of the day, all of us want the same thing. We want to be accepted for who we are. We want to be respected for who we are, and we want to be recognized and appreciated for who we are. There is no human being, irrespective of their background and their achievement levels, who does not want this. So when we are talking of building empathy, it is moving towards this state where we are able to give appreciation, we are able to give that respect and that mutual understanding and acceptance to others before we start demanding it from ourselves. So empathy is more about fine-tuning our thought process, which can help us move towards this goal. Now, if we have certain biases, like say in our country, we have certain sensitive topics when it comes to our certain communities, we have biases about certain communities. Now, if we are looking at building empathy seriously, let's start with attacking our biases. before we go out asking society to change or asking others to change their responses, let's work on our biases. Do we nurture these kind of biases? If yes, what are they? What can be done to handle these biases? Many a time, lack of information and not knowing enough is what makes us cultivate these biases. The more we know about things, we realize many of our fears are meaningless because these biases are born from fears, and fear comes from the unknown. So, a greater awareness, a greater understanding actually helps us handle those fears. And when we are not scared of something, we become more open to it. And that's the case with people as well. So empathy has to begin with the self. And when I say with the self, not just empathy towards myself, but empathy in terms of working on my biases, working on certain unfavorable thought processes that I have. It could be influences. These thought processes may not have been my own creation. My family may have believed that I become a part of it, or my social setup in that way. My friends may have been that way. But that is besides the point. It doesn't matter where it came from. But today, wherever you are, what can be done to work on our thought processes and mindsets so that we can move towards a more positive kind of relationship building levels? More respect, more acceptance, more appreciation. And that is, at the end of the day, what empathy is about. It is not just about being polite, but it is truly trying to understand others for who they are.
Okay, so you talked about leadership in your previous statement. You said that EQ helps you become a better leader. So when it comes to relationship, it's said that there's no leader in a relationship or there's no I in a relationship. So where do you think this comes into play? Like, how would you explain it to someone? Like, are they supposed to be a leader in their relationship, or do they have to look at other aspects of it? Like, it's about partnership when it comes to relationships.
Okay, let's look at the word leader. We often think about leadership as authority, as about control. Leadership is not about control. Leadership is about influence. Leadership is not about authority. It is about responsibility. So if we look at it from that angle of influence and responsibility, then every relationship requires leaders, right? We mutually influence each other. Any relationship works that way. The minute you have the I control the relationship, that's not a leader. Then that's a boss. And we know bossing doesn't help in building rapport or any relationship.
Absolutely.
But the minute it is, I can help you, that's a leader. And please help me too. That's when a relationship is born. So EQ is definitely going to be required when it comes to becoming effective leaders, because you have to have a mutual support system, a system where collaboration is encouraged. It cannot be me telling you what to do. It has to be, let's work on this together. Let's find a solution together. So that's acting like a leader, and that's a healthy relationship.
So basically, leadership is about partnership rather than just saying that I am the deciding factor here. Okay,
Absolutely.
so lastly, for all the listeners who are tuning into this podcast, what is one tip that you would say would help them improving their EQ?
That, of course, there are a couple of tips, but if I were to narrow it down, then I'll split it to two things. It would be listening and observing. The more we listen, we discover amazing life stories that each individual is. I often tell people I know that the person that you meet is not just a person, it's a story on 2 feet. So we don't just have 7 billion people on this planet, we have 7 billion life stories. So the more open we are to discovering what makes each person different, we find it more possible to open up and accept differences. Now, observing is very critical when it comes to understanding their emotional state. So observing their body language, observing the mannerism in which they express themselves, whether they are comfortable or not, that sensitization is important because that determines how you can make your communication better to make them feel more comfortable. So 2 tips: listening and observing.
Okay, so any activity that our listeners can do after this podcast to understand the level of EQ that they possess?
Okay. Um, I'd suggest one interesting activity. This is something which all of us can do at different points in time. Um, we can think of a situation where we felt very confident. We felt extremely happy. It could be a moment of success, any achievement, a beautiful surprise. Um, but think of such an event where we felt extremely happy and really, really confident. Now register who all were part of it, because we will realize that those moments happened not because of us alone. It happened because of those individuals who made it happen. They helped us, they supported us, or possibly they even created it for us. Hold on to that feeling, that awareness of those people and the moment. Now flip the situation. Think of a time when you were that someone for another person, where you created such a happy moment for another person. How did that make you feel? Think of the joy that you saw on their face, the way they may have wept tears of joy, or they may have screamed in happiness. How did knowing that you made them happy, how did that make you feel? The interesting part, we realize the happiness we felt on our achievement actually becomes lesser compared to the happiness we experience seeing someone else happy because of us. And this, in a nutshell, is making us more aware of emotional intelligence and empathy. So let's create more of these moments for people around us. Can we become these kind of superheroes, emotional superheroes for others, creating healthy environments around us?
Okay, so thank you for joining us. So, a quick summary of whatever happened. I feel that emotions are what define us. They are the ones that differentiate us from being a robotic person. Not only that, introspection is necessary. If you're doing it the right way, rather than asking the why question, you should look more towards the what, like how can I improve it? As it is said commonly that how type of questions are open and ended ones, you get a better answer from them rather than
Right.
focusing on the rear view mirror questions. Also, when it comes to relationship, leadership is not about I, that is more of a bossy statement. So anything else that you would like to add in the end?
I would say that we are humans because we were born as one.
Mhm.
But now let's focus more on being human and more humane. It's unfortunate that we have to be taught to feel and to empathize with others. This should have been something natural for us. But considering the environment and the world that we live in, let's move towards being more humane and not focus on differences. Let's look at how similar we all are and work on creating healthier relationships.
So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everyone for tuning in for the podcast. Thank you.